Welcome back to the channel. Today I would like to continue sharing chapter 174. Hell Hostel, please listen. After many struggles, Tian Sheng also really did not expect. He finally found his way here. Without thinking too much, he rushed straight ahead. After running for a while, he began to discover. In front of his eyes appeared a road leading down the mountainside. Running to a pillar on the square, Tian Sheng looked at the slope. It was not considered very long, and at the end of the road was the public highway. Sure enough, as long as he went to the main road, it could be considered as leaving the range of Phak Ha Mountain. Sure enough, it was indeed here. But it was still uncertain whether ghosts would appear at the time of leaving. Tian Sheng thought for a while and made up his mind. He widened his steps, running like the wind as he flew. Even if he died, at most it would be considered a release. Thinking of this, his entire body immediately ran down the slope. Thinking of how he had gone through many life and death situations to get here, he felt extremely excited inside. This stretch of road was actually not considered long, but Tian Sheng felt as if he could never reach the end. He finally jumped down before the entrance of the public road. Just a few more steps and he could be considered to have left Mount Puxia. Gritting his teeth, Tian Sheng no longer hesitated, taking another step. Let's see if he could do it or not. Finally, he stepped onto the main road. In that instant, he felt as if he had just passed through a wall, as if returning from the demon realm to reality. Raising his head, he saw the sun hanging high in the sky. The blood-colored moon had disappeared without a trace. But at that moment, the figure beneath his feet began to move. Tian Sheng instantly lost control of his body. He immediately went to a side on the highway, looked at a stone with a relatively sharp side. Then he squatted down and fiercely smashed his head into the stone. The curse of the shadow was absolute. Even if under objective conditions it was impossible to commit suicide, the shadow would disintegrate itself. The family would definitely die without a doubt. The dull, heavy sound emitted when Tian Sheng smashed his head into the stone finally stopped. His death was truly miserable. Who knows how long passed. When Xing Shen regained consciousness, he discovered that he was in the woods. Beside him were Lang Zhishan, Qiu Fei Fan, and Tian Sheng, 3 people. But Feng Yuxian and Lin Shuihua were nowhere to be seen. What happened? This made Xing Shen too scared. What happened? Lang Zhishan also realized that time had passed, but looking around, he discovered that Lin Shuihua and Feng Yuxian, these 2 people, had actually not appeared. This huge change almost made the faces of these people turn pale. Why? How could this be? Lang Zhishan at this moment felt restless, speaking intermittently. No, it was all based on the plot. Then why? Why didn't the 2 of them revive? It couldn't be. It was absolutely impossible. His spirit kept grabbing his hair and looking around. If it wasn't because he had some scruples in his heart, he really wanted to shout out loud to find those 2 people. However, at this stage it was all difficult. Just as they were hesitating, Lang Zhishan suddenly thought of something, hurriedly threw the backpack in his hand and said, "Quickly, quickly go. No matter what, we must quickly escape." No one dared to stop at the moment. They could only continue to run towards the destination. The plan was to go to the western lake today to find Landongmei, so that they could obtain the topographic map. But now the plan was completely disrupted. Listen to me. At this moment, Tian Sheng suddenly opened his mouth. I have arrived at the sacrificial square. When I got there, I saw a path leading down the mountain behind the sacrificial square. So I went out. When I went out, Xingchen said in surprise, "If you go out, you will be killed by the cursed shadow." Tianxing shook his head and said, "At that time I had indeed left Mount Poxia. The path behind the sacrificial square really took me out of the range of Mount Poxia, out of the range of the red moon. At that time I could still see the sun in the sky. Then I was killed by the cursed shadow. Before midnight 0 o'clock, leaving Mount Puxia would be killed by the cursed shadow. But the current situation was different from usual. Even if killed by the cursed shadow, it would still be possible to reincarnate. In other words, as long as it was confirmed that one could leave the sacrificial square, even if one was killed by the cursed shadow, one could still be resurrected. This was news that made everyone excited, and the spirit's hope burned once again. But he suddenly thought, what happened to Feng Yuxian and Lin Shuhua? Why couldn't they be resurrected after they died? Could it be that there were other mysteries in the resurrection? The four people did not know how long they ran before stopping. Tin then began to ask Tianxin in detail. He was the only one who successfully reached the sacrificial square. Lang Tri Tian and Cao Fai Pham were both killed before reaching the square. And Tianxin was the only one who witnessed the path that could leave Phak Ha Mountain. This, on the seventh day we can follow this path. Cao Fai Pham was excited. Really great. However, what exactly happened to Fong Duk Hien and Lam Tuat Hoa? The death of the two people made the originally happy people worried again. They also did not know that the death of these two people actually had nothing to do with this blood symbol. They completely believed that the two people died in the ongoing blood symbol. And if that was the case, wouldn't it prove that the plot content and the truth were a bit inconsistent? No matter what, first go find Lam Dong Mai. Lang Zhishan decided to say. Let's go west. If that lake is large, we have to go around there to look for Lam Dong Mai. Damn it, if that Fong Leet Hai guy carries out the blood sacrifice this time, it's good. He is someone who can't forget what he's seen. Just let him look at the map once and that's it. Damn it. Everyone secretly sighed. No matter what, this blood sacrifice is full of dangers. Although according to Tianxin's words, the path behind the square can be separated, but still, there are still unknown how many difficulties exist. Because going from that dense forest to the sacrificial square is really dangerous. And if we go from the other side of the canyon, it's even more dangerous. Lam Dong Mai has a map but chooses that path, also proving that there is no other path closer. Therefore, even though we get the topographic map, it is not certain that we can open a new route. We can only follow the path of Lam Dong Mai. This road is full of dangers. There is still a problem. Tin then immediately thought deeply, we must have missed something. The path of life is definitely not like this. After all, if we want the family to be able to escape to find a way to live, this path is still too dangerous. There must be another safe path. What a joke, where is there a safe route? Cao Fai Pham shook his head and said, being able to leave through the sacrificial square is already very good. What more can we ask for? Today is already the fourth day. The next 3 days are our last chance. But Fong Duk Hien is really dead. It seems that he has caused some kind of dead end, causing himself to die without being able to reincarnate. Safe route, is it that easy to say? Tiansheng also said, I think your thinking is too naive. I have read many novels. None of the routes of Lan Dong Mai are absolutely safe. So it is certain that the road behind the square can leave Mount Puxia. But is it definitely a lifeline? If not, is there any other way? Xing Shen is currently thinking, why did Li Yin read the novel at that time? Why did he get this novel? To be frank, Xing Shen does not believe that Li Yin is the one who wrote this book. He is good at writing about military affairs. The writing style is also completely different. It is not Li Yin, then who is it? There is also another problem. Is the ending of this book really that in the blink of an eye, Lan Dong Mai and her mother ran away? Maybe there is still content behind, but Li Yin did not give it to Shen Wu. This kind of possibility definitely cannot be ignored. But Xing Shen also has no way to confirm. Right now they can only go west, think of a way to get the terrain map. Of course, Lan Dongmei arrived at the western lake. It was around 2 o'clock in the morning. Before that she was inside a forest. Because the lake is a relatively safe place. So waiting there for Lan Dongmei is better. No matter what, going to the western lake is the best. After deciding, each person started to lift their feet and head west. Although they have found a safe route, but as Tian Shang said, if they leave the range of Mount Puxia, they will immediately be killed by the cursed shadow. That is because the blood seal prohibits households from leaving before 0 o'clock. The news of Tian Shang was indeed something that everyone had expected, so it was not enough to cheer everyone up. Would everything really go smoothly until midnight? No one knew. Even if one was cursed by the shadow, one could still be resurrected, which proved that even if one left the range of Mount Puxia, one would still be forced to be reborn before the 7 days of reincarnation were over. In that case, why didn't Feng Yuxian and Lin Shuhua return? In fact, it was normal for the families not to know the reason. The deaths of those two people had nothing to do with the bloodline this time, nor was it because of the difficulty limitation. The difficulty limit of normal blood characters is usually never higher than the specified level. This is exactly as Dijan speculated. The appearance of the warehouse is a blood character for all the households in the inn. What is worth mentioning is that, even if any household can complete 9 blood characters, they will never receive the announcement of the 10th blood character, because the warehouse itself is a blood character. The inn will absolutely not give any clue about this 10th blood character to anyone, unless it is a Demon King blood character. In other words, starting from entering the inn and wanting to complete 10 blood characters to be able to leave the inn, is almost impossible to complete. The original text of the entire warehouse blood character is as follows. The starting blood character will provide households with a pass card that can enter the warehouse. The warehouse will provide the group of households with various props that can be used when carrying out the blood order. From today until midnight on December 31, 2011, the warehouse will stop providing props for the blood order to the households. This is a very special blood order, but there is still one point that is similar to all other blood orders, which is a special rule. Otherwise, how could anyone survive with this difficulty? That is, starting from dawn midnight on January 1, 2012, if anyone can continue to live in this world, it is considered that they have completed this blood order. If not, they can only carry out the blood order to grant the Demon King before 2011 to be able to leave the inn. The warehouse blood order does not have the shadow of a curse punishment, because the only condition for completion is whether or not one can survive. In the inn is good, outside the inn is good. As long as a moment after 2012 arrives, the households are still alive, it is considered as completing the blood seal. Of course, currently no one in the entire household knows about this. My news is not particularly valuable. This makes Tian Sheng a little depressed. In fact, Feng Yuxian and Lin Shuhua are dead, but the corpses have not been seen yet. It is just that everyone has gradually confirmed that the two people are indeed dead. This discovery makes everyone's hearts filled with fear. Could it be that this blood seal is hiding something that can cause death? At this time, the 4 people began to recall, at that time, Feng Yuxian and Lin Shuhua did something special. But no matter how hard they racked their brains, they could only see that they had just passed a tree when they suddenly disappeared. But those trees looked very normal to the naked eye. They were poplars, pines, there were countless of those kinds of trees in the jungle. Basically, there was no sign of any suspiciousness. In other words, the deaths of those 2 people were still a complete mystery. Even when those 2 people died, they probably didn't know how they died. Why weren't they resurrected yet? Was it because of some obstacle during the rebirth? Tin then continued to analyze and said, for example, during the rebirth it was like saving the game results, but because of an unexpected reason, the records of those two people were destroyed. No, that theory sounds very unreasonable. Didn't the novel mention something like this? Lang Tri Tien's heart was burning like fire. If we can't find the real cause, can we still rely on reincarnation? And the path to life for us right now is still a mystery. Yes, the path to life is a mystery. In the novel, the life and death of Lam Dong Mai and her mother are not mentioned. But if you carefully review the content of the novel, you will find that there is no place here that can be safe forever. If at the same time there will be a place that is safe and another place that is absolutely unsafe, then perhaps it will form a safe route, but to cross the distance between these areas, it is very difficult, no, it is almost impossible. Currently, the only safe route that everyone knows is not necessarily very secure. There are two paths that can lead to the sacrificial square in the east. One is from the canyon, the other is from the jungle to the North Wind Mountain, then continue to the east to get there. But there may also be other paths, for example, from the area where the people started to participate in the execution of the Blood Temple in the southern border. Going north can also lead to the place. But Lam Dong Mai has never been through this path. The four of them had been in the jungle for quite a while, and during this time they had discovered quite a few towering mountains in the distance, but none of them had discovered where the lake was. After all, the western region was too large, and they didn't know how many kilometers it stretched out. It would be difficult to find the lake just by relying on the concept that it was in the west. Unless the lake area was exceptionally large, they would be able to follow the water to find it. Just as everyone was starting to feel bored and disappointed, Tian Xing suddenly stopped. He stood still and listened for a while. It was the sound of running water. It was the sound of running water. As soon as the words came out, everyone was instantly excited. All fatigue was immediately dispelled. Everyone moved forward very quickly, passing through the forest, and saw a lake about 10 meters wide across. The water in the lake flowed very quickly. This point was very consistent with the novel. So Lan Dongmei should be nearby. But Lan Dongmei only arrived at this lake about 2 hours before dawn, although the time in the novel was not very clear. But at that time Lan Dongmei was extremely tired and brought Tin Hui along, just sitting down to rest for a while. Really unexpectedly, they were able to be safe for 4 hours. Walking along the source of the lake to the center of the lake, everyone felt very secure. Although the surface of the lake was illuminated by the red moon, it gave birth to a very strange atmosphere. But everyone knew that this place was still relatively safe. So everyone walked along the lake shore at a slower pace. At the same time, they also remembered the path leading to this place in their minds. After all, they had no way to leave any marks, because time would turn back tomorrow. The only thing that was not lost was their memories. This time, Fong Lai Hai was not involved in the blood seal, which was a big regret. If he was there, all the problems would have been solved easily. After all, this kind of camera-like memory was often not very reliable, because the terrain here had many similar places. Of course, it was the same for Lam Dong Mai. Every time she reincarnated, she lost the topographic map, and on the second day, she had to rely on her memories to draw another map. On the fourth day, based on her memories and the map that Trang Lao Ba gave her, it seemed to be much more accurate. The terrain problem was always the deciding factor. No matter what, the terrain of this mountain was still not grasped by everyone. This point formed the most difficult problem. But at this moment, Tin then suddenly had a premonition that made the blood in his body flow backwards. His legs were also trembling non-stop. What happened? That premonition was extremely strong. Tin then felt like his heart was about to jump out of his chest. It could be said that from the time he entered Fakha Mountain until now, this was the most terrifying and dangerous premonition. Your complexion looks very bad. Tin. Lang Tri Tien noticed that Tin Than's complexion suddenly changed. Moreover, his gaze was focused on the blood-red lake. Hey, what's wrong with you guys? Aren't you saying anything? Tianxin also felt uneasy and hurriedly asked, What happened? What is that? Tin Than's hand that was constantly shaking was gradually raised, pointing to the place near the lake, where there was a rock lying on the shore of the lake. Everyone focused their eyes on following Tin Than's finger towards that rock. Then their faces quickly turned gray. No, it's impossible. Only to see that on that rock there was a piece of cloth stuck in the corner of his shirt. The original text in the novel mentioned that when Lam Dongmai passed by the lake, a piece of his shirt was stuck on that rock. It must be just a coincidence. Lang Tritian's face was not much better. Tin then gritted his teeth and said, Oh, go quickly. Go through the dense forest to Back Fong Mountain. Then find a way to the sacrificial square. Go quickly. It's impossible. Because Lam Dongmai only found the lake on the 7th day. And after leaving, a piece of his shirt was stuck on that rock. In the end, why did this happen on the 4th day? What the hell is going on? Could it be that today is the 7th day, the last day? Combined with the story of the two people, Feng Yuxian died. The spirit began to fear. Could it be that this mountain had been partially transformed when it was made real? Just like the filmmakers, there was always some difference between the original and the film. But if today was really the last day, it meant that reincarnation had ended. Once one died, there was no chance of survival. That was impossible. Impossible. The inn could not possibly have set up such a plot that did not match the difficulty. Could it be that everything was a lie? So where was the reminder of the path to life? What was the path to life? Choosing to believe that the novel really became true? Or was it that from the 4th to the 6th day, these 3 days were erased for some reason? Feng Yuxian and Lin Shuihua also disappeared on the 3rd day, right? Or did they lose their memories from the 4th to the 6th day for some reason? Tin then opened his phone to confirm once again. It was indeed Lam Dongmai who lost a piece of his shirt on the 7th day. Was this just a coincidence? Or was it true? Tin Than's heart was burning hot. From this moment on, he might really die while carrying out the blood oath, just like everyone else. After running for who knows how long, they finally saw the dense forest. Following the compass, they started running towards the north. Right now, everyone's thoughts were in chaos. If the novel couldn't be referenced because the plot had been changed, then no one could predict what would happen next. Hasn't the difficulty of this blood letter reached an uncontrollable level? No one could explain what was going on. If this was a purely supernatural phenomenon, then fine. But the blood letter always controlled the difficulty to maintain a balance with the number of blood letters. Why did such an unusual change occur this time? Or was it because it was based on the plot in the novel that it formed a dead end? But if that was the case, then what was the path of life? Too many questions existed in everyone's hearts. But who could they ask? No one could answer them. After more than 3 hours, they once again began to pass through the dense forest they had passed through yesterday. Even though they had discussed it countless times, no one had come to a conclusion. There was no way to explain it. In short, Lang Zhishan pointed at the phone and said, Things that didn't fit the plot happened one after another. First was Feng Yuxian and Lin Shuihua. They didn't come back after the time of the revelation. Next, it was that piece of clothing. Could it be that today is the 7th day? What exactly happened? Did the remaining 3 days disappear? I don't understand either. Xingqian grabbed her hair. Her eyes were bloodshot. What exactly happened? Shenwu, can you tell me? At this moment, the only person in Xingqian's heart was Shen Wu. Shen Wu was the only pillar in his heart, and also his entire hope, because this young girl entered the inn because of him. Xingqian was willing to pay any price to protect her. He clearly remembered that when standing at the entrance of the inn, Shan Wu did not say anything more, only briefly told him the address and said goodbye. Finally, she whispered in Xing Shen's ear, "You promised me. We will live and die together. Hold hands until we are old." That short sentence had become the biggest worry in Xing Shen's heart. Hold hands until we are old. First, follow the route from yesterday. Xing Shen gritted her teeth and said, "Find the tree hole I saw yesterday. Then we will think of a way to do the next step." So everyone continued to run forward. At this moment, they suddenly passed through the forest, but what was ahead made them scared, because it was an open area. Previously, it was covered by dense trees and they had not discovered anything. On top of their heads were two towering cliffs on both sides. It was a very large canyon. This place was naturally the area connecting the jungle and the canyon. The Great Canyon was a life-or-death affair. Turning around, they discovered that the woods behind had already disappeared without a trace. The original description of the novel was as follows. Lan Dongmei raised her head to look at the canyon above. She couldn't believe her eyes. A disheveled woman wearing a red dress appeared on the cliff. Then next to the red-clothed female ghost appeared the first, second, third on both sides of the cliff. Even the entire cliff on both sides was covered with red-clothed female ghosts. Lan Dongmei immediately brought Tin Hui and ran away. But at this moment, countless red-clothed female ghosts began to move like spiders, crawling down from the cliff at an astonishing speed. Furthermore, the first group to leave the canyon was followed by a second and third group. All of them were red-clothed female ghosts. How many were there? Hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands. Wherever their eyes could see, there were only female ghosts. Everyone raised their heads, their faces filled with despair. The next thing they were waiting for was death. Tin then had guessed wrong. In fact, this reincarnation novel, after being realized, was completely similar to DTN's plot. The content of the novel had not changed at all. It turned out that reincarnation was originally only 4 days. Because at first DTN wanted to set it up like that because Bon and Tu had the same pronunciation, so the novel would have an even more terrifying atmosphere. That night after Tin then went to sleep, he had only read to the part where the crazy woman appeared, but it had not mentioned how many reincarnation days there were in total. After that night, that fake household came to his computer to edit that TXT file, changing the 4 reincarnation days to 7 reincarnation days. Then changing Lam Dongmai's last 2 days of experience to 5 days. Just change the time in the novel and a few sentences and it will be done. Lam Dongmai actually only died twice, but it was changed to 4 deaths. Other than that, the entire content was the same. The next day when Tin then got out of bed, the Luan Hoi novel he was reading was a TXT file with the content already changed. If you don't check the edit history, you basically can't tell that this file has been edited. Moreover, even though it was changed, it was only within 100,000 words, so no one would notice it. Therefore, DTN's terrifying novel had been revised to more than half. And all of this, Xing Shen had no idea what had happened. If they followed the official novel and carried out the blood order, then perhaps they could really find a way out. The pink moonlight shone down everywhere. Many sounds began to appear above the canyon. Xing Shen would never be able to leave Mount Puxia. The sharp sounds and miserable screams echoed everywhere. The entire Mount Puxia was covered by a scream. Deep rain. It was just that the sound was too miserable, too desperate. Even if someone with a heart of iron heard it, they would probably be moved. Until death, Bian Xing Shen still did not know the reason why. No one could answer him. No one. July 2nd past 4 in the morning. In front of the main door of the inn, more than 30 households gathered. because the people who carried out the blood sacrifice this time were all related to the three great powers, so the people from the three associations were all here. Especially the three leaders of the three associations, Ka Non Da, then Kok Chu De Tu and Tu Tao. And there was also Thuong Quan Min there. Where she stood, no one dared to approach. Only the people from the Holy Sun sect looked at her without any fear. They all claimed that they had the protection of the Holy Master Tu Tao, so Thuong Quan Min could not harm them. Tam Vu was standing in front of the revolving door looking outside. She had been standing like that for more than a few hours without even sitting down once. Her face was pale as if it was made of wax, making everyone around her extremely worried. At this time, Lion also appeared on the first floor. He was standing behind Tam Vu not far away. The people around were still discussing, but everyone was still paying attention to the situation outside. Everyone knew that the 6 people were in more danger than safety, because even though Mount Puxia blocked all means of communication with everyone, such a long time was enough to enter the inner city. However, no one had been able to contact the 6 of them. And Shan Wu was still standing motionless in front of the revolving door as before. "All right, let's go." Luo Shisan looked at Shan Wu's back and shook his head, as a person of Yi Wu Ming. He was very clear in his heart. He was afraid that Xing Shen would not be able to return. Pu Shen Wu, she looked very pitiful. Beside Luo Shisan was the disguise expert and Shueli. She was a person of Shen Gu Ming. But at this moment, seeing Shan Wu like this, her heart ached. She knew clearly that Shan Wu had entered the inn because he wanted to save Xing Shen, but today Xing Shen was no longer in this world, so Shan Wu entering the inn had no meaning at all. It was probably retribution. At this moment, behind Shueli, someone was saying, "Who told this woman to kill so many families before? And didn't Bian Xing Shen himself also kill a family? Seems like her name was Pu Min or something. So we don't have to sympathize with them." And Shueli frowned, just as she wanted to turn around and say a few words. Luo Shisan pulled her hand. "Don't do unnecessary things." Luo Shisan looked at Shueli and shook his head, saying, "There was no need to complicate things like this." And Shueli glared fiercely at Luo Shisan. The other party was someone in the alliance that opposed her, and she and he originally had nothing in common. But this man's name is also funny, 13. Why did his parents give him such a nice name? Moreover, this man rarely appears in the inn, but he is a very useful intelligence provider. Ka Non Da often appears by his side. And what kind of character is Ka Non Da? To be valued by him like that. La 13 is definitely not ordinary. The person who said the retribution was a very beautifully dressed woman. And Tuet Lu turned her head to look at her and slightly frowned. That woman wore heavy makeup. Her clothes were also relatively cool. Her words and gestures all showed that she was experienced. One look and you could tell that she was an indecent woman. And Tuet Lu also couldn't remember what her name was. Only vaguely thought it was Lu. Another hour passed. Half of the family had returned to their rooms. They all thought that the 6 people definitely wouldn't be able to return. In the main hall, there were only 10 families still standing there waiting. Li Yin was of course still standing there. But Ziyi had not appeared yet. Yin Yi gradually walked towards Li Yin. Li Yin's face at this moment became solemn, giving off a feeling of sadness. His eyes seemed to be able to see through the long years. There were a few strands of silver on both sides of his temples. A young man with silver hair could definitely see how much Li Yin had physically and mentally collapsed. Chapter 174 ends. Please come back tomorrow to continue reading Chapter 175. Thank you and goodbye.